Hello everybody and welcome to this morning's 2 Degrees webinar. Thank you very much for tuning in and being there. My name is Tom Idle. I'm the editor of 2 Degrees and I'll be your host for the next hour or so for what I'm sure will be a fascinating conversation. This time we're with Sky, the television and entertainment business, who I'm sure many of you know already. So we are in the offices of Sky in West London. And we're here to get some real insight from Sky, which is a company that has worked incredibly hard to develop a great sustainability strategy, to communicate it well, and also to bring its stakeholders along for the journey. And we know that many of you lovely 2 Degrees members out there have a real challenge when it comes to engaging your staff and engaging your customers around climate change, around sustainability. And I know that you're keen to find new and innovative ways of doing that. So this morning we're going to give you some insight from Sky and its approach to engagement and try and bring it to life with some examples. To give you a bit of background, Sky has been committed to tackling climate change. It became the first media company to become carbon neutral back in 2005. It committed to saving 1 billion trees in the rainforest through its fantastic Sky Rainforest Rescue program, which kicked off back in 2009. And then this year it did something very interesting indeed. It sent 2 men from Sky News all the way to Antarctica as part of a polar explorer Robert Swan's 10th International Antarctic Expedition. And the idea was to cover a story in a new, innovative way that brought climate change to life to people across the UK, to the Sky audience. So that is the focus for today's session. And we're going to really help you understand how Sky used this opportunity to really engage new audiences. And we've got a great panel. We have a slight change to the programme that was advertised. Unfortunately, Tom Rayner, the Sky News Middle East editor, is currently on location, is not able to join us this morning, but we do have Chris Pearson, who is a Sky News cameraman and editor, who joined Tom on the expedition. Chris is going to join us. And unfortunately, Emily Schuckberg from the British Geological Survey is not able to join us either. She has an equally good excuse. She's just about to give birth and is unable to join us this morning. But we do have Tamsin Gray on the line from the BGS standing in for Emily. So that's great. So let's meet our panel. I'll ask each of them to introduce themselves briefly. Fiona, seeing as you're sat next to me here in Sky HQ, you kick off.
Okay, so I'm Fiona Ball and I'm the Head of Environment, Stakeholder Engagement and Sky Rainforest Rescue at Sky. So my responsibility is quite a broad responsibility, both for looking at how we reduce our own carbon emissions and our own environmental footprint, both operationally, also through our supply chain, and also how we develop our products with sustainability in mind, but then also how we engage our opinion formers on the work that we're doing at Sky, and then how we engage our consumers with what we do around Sky Rainforest Rescue.
Great, thank you, Fiona. Chris, if you could introduce yourself briefly.
Hi, I'm Chris. I work for Sky News as a cameraman and editor, based in the UK, but also get deployed abroad when needed.
Okay, thank you, Chris. And finally, Tamsin, I apologise, I've got your organisation incorrect. It's actually the British Antarctic Survey. Tamsin, if you could just introduce yourself.
Hi, Tom. Yeah, I'm Tamsin Gray from the British Antarctic Survey, and I work as an Antarctic meteorologist, researching climate change in Antarctica. And I spend about half of my time working on bases in Antarctica, mainly on the Antarctic Peninsula, which is currently one of the fastest warming places in the planet, and I believe the same region that Chris visited.
Indeed. Okay, thank you, Tamsin. We'll get cracking in just a moment. For those of you tuning in using WebEx, we of course want you to enjoy the conversation here, but we really, really want you to get involved as much as possible by sending us your questions, sending us your comments, and really engaging in the conversation here. You can do this at any point during the next hour. Use the Q&A box on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. Just type in your question, press send, and we'll try and get through as many of your questions as possible in the next hour. You can also do the same thing on Twitter. If you're using Twitter, you can send us your questions using the hashtag SkyQA, so please do that. If you have any technical questions during the session, you can't hear us properly or something else is happening, then do use the chat box, which I think is on the right hand side also, and send us your message, and we'll get back to you straight away. So Q&A box for questions, chat box for anything technical. Right, let's start. Let's begin. Fiona, I'd imagine it's not easy to get invited on an expedition of this nature. So how did this really come about for Sky?
Okay, so at the end of last year, Sky wanted to update its opinion form with respect to our new environment strategy. We had new targets, 10 targets that we released at the end of last year, and also our ongoing partnership with Sky Rainforest Rescue, because that came to the end of its first 3 years, and we wanted to tell our opinion formers and our stakeholders what were our plans for the next 3 years with WWF and Sky Rainforest Rescue. So we had a dinner for our stakeholders where we took them through what we were doing in detail with our chief executive. As part of that, we always look to see if we can find an inspirational speaker to bring along to these events that people might not have heard from before. And I was lucky enough to hear Robert Swan speak a couple of years ago about his expeditions and how it had completely changed his life and his view on climate change and environmental issues, particularly because on his first expedition to Antarctica, for example, his eyes changed colour from brown to blue because of the ozone hole. Wow. And it was only, during that expedition that they actually realised it was a hole in the ozone layer. So this was coming back some years ago. But obviously that completely changed his idea, and he wanted to look more and more into what was actually happening. And he was just an absolutely amazing speaker. So we thought it was a good opportunity for our opinion formers to hear from Robert. And as a result of that, he was telling us about his next expedition, his 10th expedition, and wouldn't it be great to try and reach out to other consumers and other people that he necessarily weren't hearing about what he was doing around the expedition, Antarctica particularly, and the issues facing Antarctica, and issues around climate change. So we put them in touch with our Sky News guys who took up the opportunity. So it came about that way, really.
Okay, sounds good. So, Chris, you went on the journey with Tom. How did you prepare for this expedition journalistically?
Okay, well, firstly, we started off by obviously researching the facts about the Antarctica. We did this by speaking to various experts, including Emily Shukbar, who unfortunately can't be with us today. And we recorded these as kind of YouTube-style clips, so that we could use them later on the blog for the expedition. We also prepared some background material, such as graphics explainers, which involved looking deeper into Antarctica, kind of what the impact of global warming is and who owns it and things like that. And we kind of got these ready just in case we had any problems whilst we were on the ground technically, so that we had some kind of material for the blog that could be updated for up to 72 hours. So yeah, that's what we did.
And how long were you actually out there?
The trip itself was nearly 2 weeks, but we were actually only kind of on the boat surrounded by ice sort of in the region for 6 days.
Right.
The first kind of 3 to 4 days we spent in Ushuaia in Argentina, which is where we left on the boat, where we got to know the team. We went through various team building exercises, obviously a few safety demonstrations before we left. Once we set sail, it's a 2-day trip, so yeah, by the time we got there, it's a good chance to get to know everybody and obviously speak with Rob as well, which was good. And then 6 days on the region, and then 2 days across the Drake Passage back to Ushuaia. Right.
And what did the trip actually produce in terms of content? This was about creating a dedicated online blog area, wasn't it? What did you actually produce out there?
Well, we did the kind of traditional TV reports as well, but we wanted to do something slightly different, and we did that by creating a live blog which allowed people to engage with the trip at a deeper level. So the blog included exclusive news clips which were updated on a daily basis from the region. Yeah. And this really allowed people to comment and engage in the climate debate.
And that was crucial, Fiona. That was crucial.
Yeah, that was the whole idea. Obviously, there's a worry before we got there. I mean, reporting from that region's hard anyway, but to try and send back daily updates via a satellite link, we wasn't sure how successful it would be. But it was a great success. We managed to update the blog every day, and we got quite a lot of comments and reaction from it. We also sent back 3 reports for TV, which is kind of the more traditional way of reporting.
Sure.
Which again, as we were able to send these back of an evening whilst we were there, it meant that they were out being broadcast on Sky News the following day.
Yeah.
So it was all very it was happening there, it was live. Whereas if you look back to kind of the more traditional way in the past, we would have usually shot a huge amount of material, come back to the UK after the trip, maybe sat in an edit suite for 2 or 3 days, and then it would have gone out maybe a week later. So this was a great way of kind of here and now, immediate reaction, getting people involved while we're on the ground.
And what sort of reaction, Fiona, were you getting from your audience in terms of the blog? What were people saying? What sort of conversations were happening?
Go on.
Oh, sorry, Chris, you carry on.
Well, from what I've seen, it's kind of obviously a mixed bag. Everyone's got different opinions. That's the whole idea of it. There's also a lot of links through. It wasn't just a blog. There's people on Twitter as well, and we put various things on YouTube, so people commented on that as well. Really, it seems that to me, a lot of people, it raised awareness. A lot of people wasn't really aware what was going on in the region, and also 2041 as a whole, what was being done about it. So it's kind of proved it's been a good way of making people aware of what's going on, as well as people. Obviously, there's people that already know as well.
Okay, thanks, Chris. And Fiona, for you, it was about creating conversations and meeting your objectives. What did it do from that perspective?
Yeah, well, it actually meant that sort of, as well as just having sort of like a very quick sort of like news article, people had the opportunity to actually delve much deeper into the issues and ask questions around the science behind what was happening. And we had over 10,000 people actively using the blog and asking questions, and as Chris was saying, it was real-time information. It wasn't something that was going to be shown on TV sort of like 7 days later. They could actually see, real time of what was happening, and I think that was quite unique and gave people the opportunity to actually really get involved in what was in the debate. Traditionally,
this is a really tough area to get people engaged on. People kind of switch off with the whole climate change debate. How often do you track your progress in engaging that audience, and what results are you seeing?
Yeah, so we track with our own consumers the different initiatives that we put out on air and online and through other sort of like engagement activities every 6 months through a tracker that we have. And the last results showed that over 43% of our customers were aware of our environmental programming and our initiatives around climate change and environmental issues, like Sky Rainforest Rescue. So we're starting to get much more engaged in the issues of climate change, which is great because our customer base is obviously very wide. We're not talking to National Geographics or the Discovery channels. We're talking to a very wide audience who watch Sky One and Sky Living and stuff like that, which wouldn't necessarily be engaged in environmental issues. So to reach 43% of our customers is quite amazing.
It's impressive. Okay, do keep your questions coming in to us. We've had a few coming already, and we'll get to those in a sec. But please do send us your questions and comments for any of our panelists. Emily, let's hear from you. You're used to working on the ground. Sorry, not Emily. Sorry, Tamsin. You're used to working on the ground in this part of the region. What was the reality? What's actually happening out there in the Antarctic that we can learn from?
So Antarctica as a whole is very sensitive to climate change. Obviously, there's a lot of ice there, and in the region where Chris visited, the Antarctic Peninsula, that's one of the fastest warming regions of the planet. It's warmed up about 3 degrees in the last 50 years, and that's led to a lot of change that we've already seen there. So, for instance, around the Antarctic Peninsula, there's a lot of floating ice shelves, which is where the rivers of ice, the glaciers, flow off of the continent and float on the sea. And we've actually seen them disintegrate. Large, chunks of ice the size of whales have disintegrated in the past decade around the peninsula. And what that means is that then the glaciers that are flowing off of the peninsula start to speed up because it's like they've no longer got a cork, at the end of them holding them back. So they're speeding up and flowing out into the ocean. So we've seen about nearly 90% of the glaciers in the Antarctic Peninsula region speed up significantly in the last 50 years, which obviously has an impact for the rest of the world because that's leading to some quite dramatic increases in the rate of sea level rise. And that's only one small part of Antarctica as well. We're now starting to see warming in West Antarctica, which is a much bigger region that holds enough ice to cause several meters of sea level rise. And there's some huge glaciers there, which we're studying quite a lot at the minute because there's a lot of change taking place. And
are there any specific examples of things that are happening around the world which are happening as a direct result of what's happening in the Antarctic region?
Well, the most direct, the easiest one for people to relate to is the issue of sea level rise, the ice melting, and therefore even people hear about sea level rise and think, at the minute it's only maybe about 4 millimeters a year, and that doesn't sound like a massive amount, but actually that makes a huge difference cumulatively, and it means that actually extreme events, flooding and things like that happen much more often. It doesn't take very much sea level rise to cause extreme flooding events that used to happen once in 1,000 years suddenly to happen once in every 10 years, for example.
Yeah. And Chris, coming back to you, were you surprised by what you saw in that part of the world?
Yeah, the standout thing really, as Tamsin just mentioned about bits breaking off there in the region, was at one day on the trip, we got very early to see part of the Larsen B ice shelf, which was basically broke away apparently 11 years ago. And there's still, it just gives you an idea of the sheer scale of it. We were floating past some bits of it which are still there, which was almost a kilometre in length. And it was quite shocking just what's happening in that kind of aspect, that kind of scale 11 years ago, and it's still there's still evidence of what's happened.
And how does it make you feel?
Well, like I say, it was quite a shock. It kind of makes you realise it hits home of how much of an impact we can have, to some extent we are having, which is affecting climate change and obviously what happens in Antarctica, how it will definitely affect the rest of the world.
And has it changed your perception? So what was your feeling towards that part of the world before you actually made the journey? Yeah,
this is it. Before I've got to be honest, I didn't know too much about about climate change or the region as a whole. So the expedition has kind of opened my eyes to what's going on. I learned a hell of a lot on the expedition. The expedition itself kind of was made up of various educational lectures as well. So as well as seeing it firsthand, you got to hear a bit of history about it, and obviously plenty of presentations from Robert Swan and the team as well.
Sure.
So I've come away with a lot more knowledge and kind of awareness more than anything.
Yeah. And Tamsin, what is it that companies like Sky can do in terms of engaging people on some of these issues that perhaps your organisation couldn't do?
Well, I think that it's really a message that we need to get out to the masses, and so it's fantastic that Sky wants to engage in climate change, and I think Antarctica is actually reporting on places like Antarctica is a brilliant way to do that, because it is interesting and exciting to people, and it's actually not very difficult to explain why it's really important to them either. So I think Sky getting involved in issues in the Antarctic is a brilliant way to get people to see the realities of climate change, because it is, you can show some pretty concrete evidence of things that are taking place down there that make it pretty difficult for people to deny that something's going on.
Yeah, and are you as an organisation proactively kind of touting the business community to help you engage the masses, as you say?
Well, we do a lot of work with various media organisations to try and get the messages out there, because it's really important that people realise what is going on. I'm not sure how much work we do with the business community specifically, but they certainly should be hearing about our work through some of the media attention that it attracts.
I met Emily for the wider business community. I met Emily 2 or 3 years back now when I joined Cambridge University's Business Environment Programme.
Okay.
And they do an excellent a week course on climate change specifically. And the British Antarctic Survey are integral part of that educational programme. You go up to Cambridge, you go to the British Antarctic Survey headquarters, you get to see the ice cores, and you get to learn so much. So I would, they do a huge amount with business generally, and I would recommend anybody that's on this call, if they're interested in this area and learning more about it, to have a look at it, the Cambridge University's Business Environment Programme's one, because the course is brilliant, and you get to meet these guys, you know, and you get to ask lots of interesting questions with respect to the science behind it. So
let's take one of the questions from our audience that's come in. It's around the fact that you guys have used the Antarctica expedition as a kind of a pivotal point in which to build an engagement program around. Nikki Van Dyke asks, do the panelists have any broader tips for engaging staff and customers in these issues without travelling to the Antarctic?
Good question. So I think obviously the key thing with respect to is keeping it relevant, keeping it up to date, keeping the information exciting and new, looking at different ways of engaging your employees. You know, so for example, what we do around Sky Rainforest Rescue, which is very similar to the Antarctica issue with respect to you don't want to send everybody out to the rainforest, is bringing facts and bringing real case studies and stories to life for employees and communicating through, you know, stories that we're doing and the work that we're doing on the ground. And other ways that we've done it is through engaging people through interactive quizzes and stuff. So bringing it to life in a story, in a video for people to watch to gather the information and asking questions and quizzes around it so that people can get involved and win prizes that way. So I think there are lots of different ways that you can engage your employees. You know, video footage, the great work that our camera team did at Sky News with respect to the pictures that they brought back is a really nice engaging way, but really sort of like, you know, real stories from people like, you know, Tamsin and Emily and people who travelled out there and relaying that through Q&A sessions, briefing sessions with Chris, you know, getting him involved, coming back and speaking to our employees. There's lots of different ways that you can engage people. Yeah,
and some of the images that the audience is seeing right now really does bring it to life.
Definitely.
Tamsin, any advice from you in terms of engaging people? Obviously, it's great to take people to these parts of the world to really bring it to life, but any other advice of how businesses like Sky can really engage people on climate change issues?
I agree with Fiona's point that it's good to, I mean, you don't have to travel there to find out what it's really like being there. You can talk to people who've spent a lot of time there. So I think it's a great point that it's really good to talk to us, those people who've lived down there and experienced it, because when you've got those stories that can bring it to life and people who can say, I've seen this, it's happening, I think that makes a huge difference.
Yeah. And Fiona, are there any plans to repeat this experience, to do this trip again, to track progress, look at changes?
So I think it just depends on what the opportunities come up, and you know, we do have you know, good connections with British Antarctic Survey, and I know that the guys at, you know, Sky News speak to them on a regular basis. So I think it's really just looking at what opportunities come up. But we do always have a look with respect to how we can, you know, not necessarily this particular issue, but how we can sort of like raise awareness through different programming. So we are looking at our programming and what other opportunities. There are more programmings coming up around climate change issues later on in the year. So we are constantly looking at ways to do this. Yeah.
And this has obviously been a fantastic engagement activity. We know that maintaining momentum is a real challenge, and there'll be lots of companies listening in who have maybe launched an engagement strategy and then it kind of falls by the wayside once the initial excitement has kind of passed. What's the strategy for you guys in keeping this conversation going and building on the momentum you've kind of got so far?
Yeah, so, well, the strategy is to keep refreshing it, to keep refreshing the look. So, for example, with respect to Sky Rainforest Rescue, we do I Love Amazon Week now. So we've changed it to sort of around the primary focus for the last 3 years was around raising funds and money for the project to start and get kick-started. And now our number one focus is around engaging people and bringing people's awareness of the issues of deforestation and climate change higher up on the agenda. So we're much more focused now around working with the families, what we're doing with the families on the ground in Acre. So, for example, we work with over 1,000 families locally around issues around protecting their forests, around rubber tapping and bringing a more sustainable economy to the region. So we're doing a lot more communication around what we're doing with the families on the ground. But I think it's completely refreshing, looking at new ways of bringing the issue to people and from a different lens, because otherwise people can get quite tired of hearing the same story.
Yeah. So has the Rainforest Rescue Programme been more of a success than you thought it would? Because it's been going for quite a long time now, hasn't it? It's a real plank of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Is it more successful than you thought it would be?
Well, we've I mean, it's very successful. We had in our first 3 years we had a target to raise £2 million, which we were going to also match, so £4 million to kickstart the project, and it was all around piloting RED Plus and showing that RED, could succeed, and the importance of that in protection of rainforests. And that did that, and it also, we met our targets around, fundraising well ahead of schedule. So in the next 3 years, we're also going to raise a further £2 million and match that. But we've got very high targets around raising people's awareness of rainforest issues and climate change. And as I said, we've got to 43% already with respect to our customer base, and we're even, we're even got a figure around 27% with prospects, so people who don't currently have Sky, which is a pretty high rate considering that most of our programming is on our channels anyway. And so it is a lot more successful than we originally set out. It was something very new for us to do, but it's something that with success comes ambition, further ambition from us, so we're just setting ourselves much higher targets of what we want to achieve out of the programme.
Which is what does good look like? Where do you need to get to?
We need to make sure that in the next 2 years we're going to leave a sustainable solution for the project area that we're working in Acre to ensure that the trees are saved for the long term, and that the local area, the local government of Acre and families have a sustainable economy that they can work with, so that they don't have to cut down the trees. They have a way of making a living still whilst preserving that particular area. And if we can do that, and it's for the long term rather than just our involvement, then that's a success.
Yeah. And take us back to kind of 2009 when the Rainforest Rescue Programme started. What was your thinking behind choosing the rainforest as a kind of a central plank of your corporate responsibility programme?
Sure. So we knew that we had an opportunity as a broadcaster to and quite a unique opportunity to really engage people and inspire people on, particularly around environmental issues, but we just didn't know which area to focus on. So back in 2009 we actually went out and we did some surveys, and we spoke to a lot of our customers, and we asked them what kind of issues would you like us to address on your behalf and engage with you on. And two things came up, one around energy efficiency, because obviously the energy using with respect to our products and customer homes, and one around rainforest, and that was probably linked to the fact that at the time, we don't have at the moment, but we did have a Sky magazine, so paper relating to rainforest and where the paper use was. So we were doing a lot at the time, and we still do, with respect to the energy efficiency of our set-top boxes and our products, and bringing around things like auto standby and increasing the energy efficiency of our equipment. So we therefore wanted to look at this quite unique opportunity, because nobody was really doing it around the rainforest. And we were also very aware that rainforest was something that everybody was very aware of sort of 5-6 years ago, but it had kind of fallen off the agenda of people. And I think people just thought that it was being dealt with. Well, it was okay. It was something that, we've all moved to FSC and, 100% recycled paper, and then it wasn't necessarily such a big issue anymore. But we realised that this wasn't the case. It was still a very big concern, and we wanted to raise people's awareness of it and the rate at which we are unfortunately losing the rainforest and the reasons behind that. Because it's obviously not just all about paper. A huge amount of our products that we use day to day, whether it's soya, our food products, our cosmetics, our medicines, all come from the rainforest, and it's a vital part of our existence. So we took that opportunity, and we spoke to people that we thought would know a bit more about it, so WWF, and asked whether we could come up with a partnership that could address that issue.
And on that partnership, how important is that partnership in driving your programme? You've been partners for a while now with WWF.
Yes.
How does it work? What does that relationship look like?
Okay, so it's quite a complicated partnership because we have a partnership with WWF in the UK, that we work with very closely with, but we also have a partnership with WWF in Brazil, and also the Acre state government, because obviously this is something that we need all those parties together to actually make something. It's not the Sky Rainforest Rescue is not about just raising money for a particular project. It is about working with those partners and working with the local community in making something that's going to be sustainable for the long term. So we've got a four-way agreement and partnership with those parties. But WWF are obviously key to the whole process. Yeah. They're the experts on the subject matter, and they're also the experts in the field with respect to WWF Brazil, and getting that very close relationship with Acre.
Yeah. And is it a long-term partnership, or is it just a rolling partnership? How does it work?
No, it's a long-term partnership. I mean, we've the first stage of the partnership was 3 years, and we've renewed last year our partnership for a further 3 years. So it's a long-term partnership. Yeah. But it's the partnership we have with WWF. I mean, it's much more than just Sky Rainforest Rescue. They're key partners, and they're people that we really respect their opinion with respect to what also we're doing at Sky with respect to our own environment strategy. So they're key partners. They're key people to speak to on a day-to-day basis. Is
that the secret to the success of the partnership, that you kind of respect each other's objectives?
Yeah.
And you work together as much as you can?
Yeah, respect each other's objectives. It's key to have a very clear set of KPIs and targets and objectives for the partnership from the start, so that we all know that we're on track to meet it. And also respect and understand each of the partners' expertise that they're bringing to the table. Yes. So WWF are the experts with respect to rainforests and environmental issues, and also engagement with schools, because part of the Sky Rainforest Rescue programme is a schools programme. Yeah. And then our expertise that we can bring to the table is obviously our reach to our customers through both our programming, our marketing, and our awareness and communications. And as long as both parties know exactly what they bring to the table, it works pretty well.
It works. Okay. Let's have a look at some of the questions coming in. Interesting question here from Sophie Offord. Maybe something that Fiona and Tamsin can give us some comment on. She says, how do you tread the fine line between informing the public about what's happening in Antarctica and the effects of this without invoking alarmism and fear? And she says that it has been shown to put people off the issue. Tamsin, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, sure. It's an interesting question, because sometimes I get the impression that we're actually doing the opposite. We're worried about invoking alarmism and also, getting climate skeptics all riled up. So we're scared to say anything bold about what is really going on. I think that the key is to be constructive, to say these are the changes taking place, but talk about how we've still got control over it, because there's various scenarios that could happen into the future, some of which could be very serious and some of which could be much less serious. So people need to understand that we still, it's not just, some things are going to happen regardless of what we do now, but it's not just a wave that we have to ride. We still have a lot of control over our future, and I think that's the key message to get across when talking about it.
Yeah. Well, what is the bleakest picture? What are we looking at, just to stick with the negative for a moment?
so now you want me to invoke some alarmism and fear. Well, if I talk about the extremes, I mean, people state facts like the whole of Antarctica. If that all melted, that could cause something like 60 meters of sea level rise, which is obviously, going to flood millions of people's homes, if not billions, all the major cities. That's not going to happen in the next few hundred years for certain. East Antarctica is a very cold place, and that's where most of the ice is. West Antarctica, however, is starting to warm up, and that has, as I mentioned briefly, enough ice for about 4 meters of sea level rise, and it's possible that we could see up to almost a meter of sea level rise by early next century. That's not just coming from Antarctica, it's coming from ice all over the world, and also the warming which causes expansion in the oceans. And that's going to have a massive impact, like I said, not just on flooding directly from the sea level rise, but on extreme events. People are already noticing that we're seeing a lot more extreme weather, and that's really going to have a dramatic impact on people's lives. And actually, sea level rise is not the only thing that comes from climate change in Antarctica. We've seen changes in the ocean circulation and the atmospheric circulation down there, which, it's one big system linked to the rest of the world. It's been in the news lately that changes in the Arctic are having an impact on the jet stream, which affects British weather. And the same kinds of knock-on effects come from changes taking place in the Antarctic.
Okay, what about for you, Fiona? What's that balance? How do you tread that thin line?
Well, I think you do have to tell people what the facts are, and the facts are quite serious, but you have to grab people's attention, because unfortunately nowadays there's an awful lot in the news. There's an awful lot of news stories, and it can go over people. It can wash over people unless you do grab people's attention. So you do need to grab people's attention first of all, so that they're listening. But then it's important to also show people what the solutions to it, what can be done, and particularly what individuals can do, around it. So there are lots of things that people can do. So, for example, with the rainforest, we put out a program last year with respect to the people's rainforest, and this was specifically looking at consumer purchasing choices that you can make, very simple ones in the home with respect to, and understanding that the choices that you make with respect to purchasing, whether it's coffee, whether it's, your sofas, whether it's the paper, whether it's wood, and understanding where that comes from and the consequences of your choices. Yeah. Very simple things that people can do, I think so. For us, it's all around communicating what the issue is, but then advising and helping people understand what they can do as part of the solution. And it might be very small, but if everybody does it, then it can actually make quite a big difference.
And has that approach changed within Sky over the years? Because there was a point where we were inundated with images, not necessarily from Sky, but from everybody, of the floating ice caps with polar bears. And that kind of has gone away now, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Has there been a shift internally for you guys, or have you always had that vision?
So we've always had that vision at Sky that with our amount of customers we have, we've got 10.7 million customers, and actually together we can actually make quite a big difference in what we do around environmental issues and climate change. Yeah. And this was all our main point with respect to saving energy in the home, for example, with respect to the energy efficiency of our products, and around auto standby. That actually, small changes and behaviour changes around turning off your standby equipment in homes actually has a bigger impact than Sky's own environmental impact per year. Yeah. So, by auto standby we save 90,000 tonnes of CO2, which is the equivalent of our own operations at Sky. So, by small changes across a large group of people, you can actually make quite a big difference, yeah.
And what about you, Chris? Was it tempting to kind of go down the alarmist route with your reporting?
It's funny. Robert Swan was very much all for the positive, and that kind of rubbed off on everyone around him. And he actually said in one of our interviews that we've got on the blog, you can check it out, he talks about how we need to kind of move from this negative scare tactic because it's not been working, basically. And we need to start moving forward, being positive and looking at solutions. And just as both Fiona and Tamsin were saying, it's often small changes that can make a huge difference if we all do it together. So that really hit home with what Robert was saying on the expedition.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Let's have a look at some more questions coming in. There's a couple of coming on Twitter. This is quite a broad question from Terra Finiti. How do we take advantage of the rapid advancement of technology to combat climate change? I don't know if this is necessarily the Sky thing, but it's a kind of broader technology question. What can we do? What technologies can we use that are going to make this specifically engagement piece easier?
Yeah, well, I mean, webinars, for example, today what we're doing is reaching out to hopefully between 40 and 90 people that are registered for this on 2 Degrees Network to, share what we've done and sort of like share best practice. Twitter, and social media is also a great way with people getting really up to speed information and real-time facts and, and blogs that we used and the technology that we used when the Sky News guys went out was, as we explained, was getting out real imagery and information out real time, rather than programming something a week later after it's been edited and things like that. So obviously that's a huge advancement in technology. Yeah. I mean, the biggest one, that I see with respect to how we operate as an organisation is really being able to see what's happening around the world and meeting people and engaging people. Like our partnership, with WWF Brazil and Acre State, it's all remotely done. Yeah. It's all we don't have to go out anymore to meet people, physically meet people. You've got vis-a-vis, you've got teleconferencing, and that's obviously a huge benefit. So I think people have access to information, real-time information because of technology.
Yeah. And Tamsin, what about you? How are you guys using new technology to do what you do?
Well, I think the media team at the British Antarctic Survey do put out a lot of tweets and Facebook alerts and everything like that to share, with people who wouldn't necessarily search out those articles in the media when we've got big advancements coming out. And also it means that we can do a lot more live reporting from Antarctica. We host media teams at our bases every year, and like what Chris did this year, they can now send out a lot real time over satellite links as communications have just improved massively down there. I mean, it was only about 15 years ago that people based at the base in Antarctica didn't have email. They could only send out 200 words a month, and now we can send live TV pieces, which is pretty impressive.
Sure, yeah.
Also, can I just butt in? Just to add to that, part of what we did with the whole live blog and clips, we wanted to make it accessible and something that everybody could do. So we used YouTube, we used Twitter, links to Facebook, Flickr for photos. And so the idea was to prove that it's not just, obviously we do it as a profession, but anybody can do this kind of thing. Anyone can make a difference, and it now can be, with internet access, it can be kind of spread worldwide very easily by anybody.
Sure.
On a social level.
Okay. The expedition to the Antarctica was obviously a customer engagement, an audience engagement piece. Mm-hmm. How have you used it as an internal engagement vehicle?
Well, obviously we have other social media aspects internally in Sky as well. So we have Chatter, which is the internal engagement tool that we use instead of Twitter, where we engage our employees about what we're doing. And that's very similar to Facebook, I guess. It's very similar to Facebook. And so all of our employees currently know that we're doing this webinar. They've all been asked to join in. We can, Jess is sitting right next to me, talking to people on Chatter, engaging with them around the issues that we're talking about today. And that was exactly the same with respect to when we went out, when Sky News went out. People were told about the blog, they were sent links to the blog, engaged with them, and then when the guys come back, having proper Q&A sessions that we can organise here, sort of like face-to-face sessions with our employees as well. So same way, really, that we engage with our consumers, no difference there, except probably slightly different tools that we use,
But do your staff appreciate kind of big moments like the Rainforest Rescue Programme, like the Antarctica Expedition, to kind of bring it to life? Do they appreciate that? Are you seeing that there's more traction because of these big moments?
Yeah, I mean, I think like anything, you have to keep something fresh for employees to keep engaged, and they do appreciate everything that we're doing. We do Sky employee surveys every year, and we've got over 21,000 employees here at Sky now, and 98% of them are aware, and quite a lot of detail with respect to what we're doing on environment programs, Sky Rainforest Rescue and the news. So we're constantly asking them with respect to what programs we have put on, and what they like and what they don't like, and what else would they like us to do.
Yeah. We had a couple of specific questions actually around employee engagement. On Twitter, Sure Sustainable says it'll be interesting to know what are the key metrics Sky is using to communicate sustainability to employees. How are you tracking this progress?
Yeah, so I mean, around employees on a more general sustainability thing, we track awareness of initiatives and understanding of what we're doing. When you look down then specifically into the key metrics around sustainability, we then have our key public targets around sustainability issues, specifically, for example, with respect to environment, which I'm head of. We track around energy efficiency, our global emissions, business travel, waste, all the typical metrics, and those are all communicated out to our employees as well with respect to how we're doing around waste targets, for example, and that's split down by office and by region so that people have very clear metrics with respect to how they can get involved and how they need to change with respect to meeting particular targets.
Right.
So more generally, we look, so across the sustainability metrics, we look at sort of like awareness and understanding and of what the targets are and how they can get involved around issues like fundraising, volunteering, particular programs. And then when you go down to the specifics, it's around the specific targets that we've got, our public targets, and how that particular area of the business is doing against those targets.
And what's the toughest challenge for you in that respect right now?
Toughest data and data management. Obviously, you can't communicate anything unless you've got a very clear data management process, and that's always difficult for an organisation. It's something that we've been doing for a number of years, and is always something that we're looking at better ways of collecting the data. And I think it's like similar to what we did with the British Antarctic thing, where we were lucky that we used blogs and stuff to get information out real time about what was happening. With respect to your data and your metrics internally, a lot of things that you're waiting, come in monthly, or business travel sort of thing comes in quarterly, and it's how to gather all that information up and communicate it to employees that are specific to their particular site and location in real time. Do you know what I mean? Because otherwise you're always reporting on the previous quarter.
Sure.
But it'd be great. So we're trialling things around our Sky Studios, for example. We've spent a lot of money with respect to ensuring that our Sky Studios that we've built is very sustainable in terms of on-site renewable energy and energy efficiency. And we're trialling at the moment a screen in our reception so that people walking in and our employees walking in can see real-time information around the energy use within that building, how much energy is coming from our on-site renewables, our CCHP plant and our wind turbine, and then the efficiency of different floors so that we can get some sort of ownership of environmental issues across our employees. So it's something that we're always looking at new ways to engage people on, and real time is key to it, I think.
And how important is it? I mean, you have a very visual presence of on-site renewables here. You have a big turbine on the roof, a big CHP plant. How important has that been in terms of engaging employees when they see something visual?
Critical, absolutely critical. It brings it to life. I mean, it's very easy for us to talk about, I live and breathe environmental issues, obviously. It's very easy for me to talk about my on-site renewable target of 20% by 2020. But for, general employees across the group, to actually see that physically happening, and a wind turbine up against the Sky Studios building, which, does the whole of the office lighting for that building is a key part of it. It actually makes it real for people, and that's why we're getting such high figures from our employee survey about, over 94% of our employees believe that Sky is an environmentally responsible organisation, and that is because they not only hear about what they're doing, but they physically see it, in their offices, and that's key to engaging people.
Yeah. And Chris, what's your experience of Sky's sustainability kind of approach. Do you feel proud to be working here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, speaking as an employee myself, exactly what Fiona said is absolutely right. We see what's happening. There's evidence that we are doing something about it. And going back to what I was saying earlier, it's positive. We're looking at solutions rather than the problem, if you like. And obviously, to be sent on the trip that I was sent on as well, in terms of an employee, it was a great experience, not just for climate change, but just in general as well.
Yeah. What's your sort of key takeaway from that trip, Chris? Has it really changed your mindset? Has it? I don't know.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. I mean, obviously, like I said earlier, it's just made me more aware of what's going on with climate change, sustainability, but also it's just that, I mean, you speak to anybody who's been to that part of the world, and it's hard to explain exactly what it's like to go there, but it's such an amazing experience, kind of a feeling of, it's almost inadequacy because of the sheer kind of scale and vastness of it all. So just to go there and experience that really, and meet such an amazing group of people who are on the trip, be part of the leadership program and the training, it was really good.
Great stuff. And Fiona, coming back to you, I was interested in get some more of these questions answered. We have a question from Sandy Chandapur, who says, did you experiment with different engagement media, such as newsletters and the internet? How do you actually, what's the most effective method for engagement with your staff?
Yeah, so I think we use just about every single engagement form of communication you can do. So newsletters don't necessarily work internally as much, but we do a newsletter to all of our opinion formers on a monthly basis, telling people the highlights of what we're doing across sustainability at Sky. And some of our opinion formers, our employees, might be on that list also that get to it. Employees, so email is something that employees, they get a huge amount of emails per day, so they're very likely to miss it if you use email. Chatter is a huge thing that's taking off at Sky, and a lot of people engaging around those particular areas. So we've got lots of different chatter groups around all the different areas that we do on sustainability. So we've got a general bigger picture one, which looks at sustainability as a whole, but then we have specific ones around the initiatives. So we've got a chatter group on Sky Rainforest Rescue, for example. We've got a chatter group, around our cycling initiatives, and Go Sky Ride, Sky Sports Living for Sport, and all sorts of different initiatives that we do. So people who are specifically engaged in a particular issue can ask, and that's like what we do on Twitter or Facebook, where if you ask a message, you get a real-time information and response back. Yeah. We do use our intranet a great deal with respect to raising people's awareness. And that's particularly around the blogs come up really well. So people's, real-time sort of experience about what we're doing, and around, raising people's awareness about particular things that we're launching. That's particularly very effective. Yeah. But we do a lot. We're very, as you know, walking around Sky's offices, we're very heavily branded organisation. And so a lot of what we do is actually around branding and posters and quite innovative ways of catching people's attention on environmental issues. So, for example, we've just launched with the Forestry Commission some rainforest walks in a lot of the Forestry Commission, like Alice Holt, for example, around raising people's awareness and customers' awareness around Sky Rainforest Rescue. And to make people aware of it in Sky, we've got lots of little footprints going up to the lifts and some wellies that are standing by the boots. And that's a great way of raising people's awareness, something very different that's not normally there, in the background. So we try lots of different routes, and we've got some great internal comms colleagues who come up with all sorts of interesting ideas. Before, I've had, for example, with waste campaigns, because that's always something very dull, could I say, to try and people get engaged around waste. We've had, actors with Global Action Plan, for example. They helped us raise awareness in our canteens, and we had seagulls around, actors in seagull costumes going around talking to people. It's just trying different things, really.
It is.
Yeah.
And going back, just so our audience understands, chatter, is this something that you built internally, or
No, I believe it's something that's available to anybody, like Facebook, but it's something that our internal IT guys have really taken off and rolled out across our network.
So it's a bit like Twitter, bits for internal people.
Yeah, I would say it's more like Facebook. the look and feel of it, but it's internally, and you can have private groups where you can, for departments or particular issues that you're working on, or you can have more general open groups.
Okay, something for our audience to check out.
Yeah.
What is happening next? What's the next big thing you're working on? Whether it's engagement, whether it's energy, I know your role is quite broad, but what's the next big thing for you this year?
Oh, gosh, that's a big question. I've got lots of different things that are coming up. So at the moment, we're just trying to raise awareness, as I say, with respect to the sustainable economy for ACRE. And this is a big thing that we're working with many different partners on, looking at the opportunities. So we've just launched with Lily Cole, who's our ambassador for Sky Rainforest Rescue, a wild rubber jewellery line, which has been communicated to consumers, and this is looking at reaching out to a completely different audience again, around raising people's awareness of products and where products come from, and trying to find a route to market for the rubber tapping that we're doing in ACRE. And that's quite special, and it's a one-off line, and hopefully we'll raise awareness with a different group of people. But then, as I said, we're also looking at opportunities for expanding other particular areas around that. So we're looking at more avenues for rubber, whether that can be through possibly working with products around trainers, for example. We're looking at that as an opportunity. We're looking at the fish farming across ACRE and seeing if there's a route to market for those fish. And then we're looking at the acacia berries for farmers. So we're looking at basically concentrating on making sure ACRE's got a sustainable economy and a route to market that they don't have at the moment. And I think that's that's bringing Sky's business knowledge and expertise to the table, in that particular thing. With respect to what we're doing at Sky more generally, with respect to our environment strategy, we're really pushing forward on two particular areas at the moment. The sustainability of our products. We've got some great stuff coming up with respect to our newer product range and new products that are coming out, and making sure that they are really energy efficient, lots of recycled components to them, really cutting down on materials that are used, so looking at resource efficiency in our products. And then also working with BAFTA, who hopefully are on the call as well, around sustainable production. So we've done a lot with respect to measuring the footprint of the production that we put on air, and working with our indies around reducing the impact of actually putting TV on air.
Great stuff.
Some great stuff.
Good. So we look forward to keeping a track on all that's going on at Sky.
Yeah.
In the interest of time, I think we do need to wrap things up now. It's been a fascinating session. Thank you to the team here at Sky for inviting us in and sharing your insight and advice and tips to the 2 Degrees audience. So thank you, Fiona, and thank you also to Chris on the line. Thanks, Chris.
Pleasure.
And also for you, Tamsin, thank you very much for being there.
Thanks for having me.
Good stuff. And for those of you tuning in, once again, thank you for joining in and being part of the conversation. Thanks for your questions. I hope you found it useful and inspiring above all else. You can find out more about Sky. Visit their website, sky.com/thebiggerpicture. And also, if you have any follow-up questions, or you're watching this on repeat on the 2 Degrees platform, then you can also post questions using the box underneath this video, and the team here at Sky will promise to get back to you and answer those on the platform. You can also have a chat with the Bigger Picture team here at Sky on Twitter. Their Twitter handle is @SkyBiggerPic, so do that if you're so inclined. Thank you again, and I look forward to seeing you all on the platform very shortly. Thank you very much.